Have you ever noticed how most people use AI like a digital assistant, giving it simple one off instructions, waiting for it to spit something back? Write this email, summarize this report. It's fast, it's easy, and it's almost always disappointing. But what if the real power of AI comes from not treating it as a task doer, but a thinking partner? What if the assistant mindset is holding us back from truly transformative results? Welcome back to Continuing the Conversation. Hi, I'm Shalene, and today we're diving into the hidden trap of the AI assistant mentality and how a simple mindset shift can completely change your AI outcomes. Joining me, as always, is Rob, the CEO of CharmIQ. Rob, great to have you.
It's great to be here.
Yes. So today's topic is a great one, an interesting one, and something I'm super passionate about because I know so many people are using AI and these amazing machines in all the wrong ways. So let's get started with the term AI assistant. It's everywhere. And in some cases, in people building these products and technology, it's in their name. And it's how most people interact with these tools. Give it a task, get a result. But what's truly wrong with this type of approach? And what does treating AI as an assistant lead to such bland and generic results and in some cases wrong answers completely?
Yeah, a great set of questions there. Just in the name, we've been using these tools for a while. We've had Siri, we've had Alexa, and so forth. And I think we've been trained to think of these as task doers.
Yes.
So as we talk about AI assistants, as we talk about even our co-pilots to some effect, we think of them as task doers. We think of us as the boss and them as the doer, and we just bark some orders at it. Talked about it in our some of our previous installments here about think about the drive-through window. Like if you understand the context, you can bark an order and they can deliver your order without a lot of hassle. And that is not where we are with these tools yet. And we should really question whether that's a good idea for us to even go that way. So I want to first start with the fact that the name itself is, and I just think the connotation, the way we've been using these things for the past decades is leading us to believe that that's what we're trying to do. And I don't believe that that's true. So one of the things, if you've ever worked with a really good executive assistant, those people are amazing. They can anticipate your needs. They are already there with you ahead of time. So what's interesting is that there's a completely other side of the spectrum where you have these amazing assistants, these people who perform miracles for you, especially if you've ever, again, had the pleasure of having one. Like it removes so much burden from your life and allows you to focus on the tasks that you are really meant to do. As an executive, like so much of your time is spent on interesting minutia that you just wish you had time to focus on some really hard problems. And again, executive assistants really help with that task. So just to paint the gamut there of Alexa and Siri on one side and an amazing executive assistant on the other side. And they're all called assistant. And I think if you've ever had an executive assistant, then you know what the other side of it was. But again, I think all of us are just so used to this very transactional, do this for me. If you have a bad executive assistant, it's almost like that. And I would say that's both part of the relationship. You have to evolve together in exactly the same way that we're trying to get you to do with AI is like, how do you level up both of your experiences? Yeah. So I just want to start with that, which is like, always think about, are you bringing baggage with you with these things? Like, do you have a preconceived notion? Are there some connotations with these? And it's interesting because when we were starting to think about these topics, we were thinking about assistant and like, does that already lead you to failure? Because you're already thinking of it like your Siri and your Alexa and things like that.
Yes.
And the other one moves along to, what would allow that assistant to be better? I'm gonna pontificate for just a quick moment. Hopefully this won't take too long. I was actually talking with a friend about this the other day. And, we go back to our history. Like we look at the science fiction, we look at all of the forward-looking things from the past. And we think about like, what are the robots doing? Like, how do they work? And I always like to use the Rosie the Robot example from the Jetsons because it was an interesting character in that, if you really look at what it was doing, it couldn't be a robot, right? It played part of the family. It
Yeah.
provided like a nanny's kind of experience. And again, like think about that, right? Is we think of these robots as task doers and things, but all of the ones that you've enjoyed or you've grown up with, there's no way in which that's true, right? They're just robot faces on a regular, normal human persona. And so you can kind of think about what that means about how you would interact with that. Like, you don't work with the Rosie the robot and just say like, clean my clothes. Like there's a lot of context around that. In what way do you like your clothes cleaned, and where do you like them? And, which way do you ball your socks or do you fold your socks, right?
Yes.
Like
Yes.
how do you get that information? And as always, I'm trying different metaphors and analogies here so that people, hopefully we get aha moments from people, that when you go into your chat GPT and you just say, write me a report, and it just spits out this thing, and you're like, that wasn't it. And it's the same way, like you couldn't go to your nanny bot and say, clean my clothes, because again, how would it know how you want yours cleaned, right? Like, do you want your shirts starched, or again, do you ball your socks or do you not? And for
Yes.
some of us, like that's a big difference. Like when I start my day and things are in a bit of a disorder, that's terrible. So again, my hope with these analogies is to really get it to you that there's a symbiosis, like there's this growing together as you teach and as you learn together these different things. And going along with that, again, that assistant kind of analogy there, think about the difference between the way you delegate a task to a human and the way you delegate a task to an AI. Again, right now, we do AI very transactionally. We bark orders at it. We just tell it we would give it the equivalent of just, clean my clothes, and then we would be angry when it did it wrong. And again, think about when you would do that with a human. You would be, the first time you would bring in that house cleaner or whatever that is, you would give a lot of instructions about the way that you like to do things and the way you like things cleaned, and all of those other things. You would never just say, go clean my clothes, and then be expected when it came back. Because, and I hope, again, some of these analogies land, because you can imagine a world in which you just tell your house cleaner that you just brought on for the first day, just clean my house, and you come back and you can't find anything anywhere anymore, because like, how would they know where things go, because they're not there now? So hopefully those analogies help.
It does. It's you're right. We were trained early on with the Siris and the Alexas and even Google, right? If you think about it, it was just, there was a box and you put in a question and it gave you an answer. And sometimes it was good, sometimes it wasn't. Sometimes you had to ask again. And we've all been trained this way. So now we're working with much more sophisticated machines that can really produce transformation, right? And really great results, but it's partnering with the machine and not just barking the order. So we have to shift our mindset. And I love what you said, because I'm really, particular when it comes to my laundry, and I don't dry like 80% of the clothes that I have. And if I came home to all the clothes being dried and half the size or ruined, I would be really upset. So it's a great analogy. It definitely hit home with me. And it's really the mindset we have to have when working with these amazing machines that are there to help us in so many ways. So it's like a mindset shift. And how do we do this? As treating AI as a doer to working with it as a thinking partner, right? What does that actually look like in practice? How does it change the way we interact with AI? And what kind of results can it really unlock if we have this simple mind, shift? Because we all have this ability. We've all worked with bosses, coworkers, teachers, friends, even the way we order at a restaurant, right? And we have the ability to do it. So how do we transform that into working with AI?
Great question. I'm going to hit on a couple of our common themes here. But and your restaurant one is an interesting one as well. Because I'm one to bring up all these analogies. Especially when I go to higher end restaurants, like if you go to your local Arby's, it doesn't really matter what the server wants or doesn't like. But when you go to a higher end restaurant, and those folks spend their days talking to people about the food, like they are there for their work time, 8 hours a day, and asking them their thoughts on the menu. Don't go in with a preconceived notion and say, I want this or not this, but like, hey, what is good? What is the chef bringing forth? What are those things? And again, I'm just bringing that up in the context of the same thing with your AI, which is sometimes it's good to ask a question to start rather than just write a report. Just start asking questions about how one should structure a report or those kind of things. Again, so sometimes flipping it around and asking the question rather than simply dictating the result might be the way to do it. But getting back to your specific question, I would say two things is really important as we're starting to, how do we transition to using things as a thought partner? Well, I would just say the first one is always, I always put empathy first. I'm always saying, put your empathy hat on and say,
Yes.
well, how would you like to receive that task? So if somebody else was on the other side and they said, write a report, what's always funny is if you work with younger employees, they'll just go scurry off and write a report and come back.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely not what you want to do. And one of the things that it takes forever to teach, younger workers that just out of the workplace, your interns and so forth, is to ask questions.
Yes.
So almost by definition of what I'm saying, the good workers are the ones that won't just write that report. They'll say, okay, and I think we'll touch on this a little bit later as well, but I'll touch on it now. The things like, well, who is the audience of the report? What do they want to hear? All those kind of things. So again, put the empathy hat on and say, well, if somebody asked you to make a report, like what questions would you ask them? And start there and start with those things and start to flesh that out. So when you go to ChatGPT and you say, write me a report and say, write me a report for this audience that has this level of skill, that have this amount of time to conceive it, that have this amount of background and this much information ahead of time. And what type of report is this? Is this to summarize the information? And I would always encourage you, again, this is what's amazing about having these large language models, is if you're unfamiliar with the different types of ways of conveying information, you could just ask your dude and say, hey, like, what are the different ways that people receive information? And we do this with meetings. We'll transition from an information gathering meeting to a status meeting to all these things. And it's always better to have different meetings for different things. So I just think in general, people aren't aware of the fact of these things. But again, you're sitting in front of this machine, which can help you find that out. You can have a side conversation and say, hey, like, what is the best way for me to get you this information? You distill that thing down. You can use that for future things. In Charm, I always recommend that once you have those things, you literally use the charm creating charm to help you turn that thing into a charm. So your first step before barking the order of create the report should be like, how do I thinking about this report? And so you don't have your first charm that you call isn't the report writing charm. It's how do you extract the information from my brain about the report that I'm going to ask you to write? So it's
Right.
like that charm's the first charm. And
So I think you hit on some really important points. I know the answer to this question I'm going to ask, but I love when you answer it for us and explain it. So the transactional assistant approach almost guarantees mediocre results, even though it's funny in the beginning when you first start working with these AI machines, people are like, whoa, that was incredible. I gave it a report and it gave me a summary and that's amazing. And I always love that first experience working with people. But then I'm like, whoa, we didn't even get to the cool stuff yet because we gave it one simple task with one simple, request. But this transactional assistant approach almost guarantees mediocre results. So when AI is very advanced, what are the reasons why we get the lackluster kind of results? And what's the magic secret sauce to getting oh my God, this is incredible results? What do we have to kind of shift in our own way of interacting with AI?
absolutely. The answer, especially if you've listened to us before, the answer is context is king or queen or whatever
Yes.
royalty you want it to be. Context is absolutely important. Otherwise, you're getting the same response as everybody else. So
Yes.
the way that I like to think about this thing is think about all possible answers that can be returned in a particular situation. So when you say write the report, like think of that space of all the possible reports that can be done. And your job is to provide the context such that the report that it produces is the one that you want. And again, given the fact that even given a single, let's say you have a PDF of something that you're trying to turn into a report for somebody. And just given that, and you ask it to generate a report, whether you are, again, an executive or somewhere in the middle or an individual contributor, like just that is going to say, the type of information that you do. And then the domain that you're talking about, because there's always nomenclature that is very specific and the ways that you talk about things is very specific. So those are just two dimensions. So if you
Oh
don't
boy.
tell already when you get started that the type of report that we're generating is for an executive team that was from the Midwest, that has this kind of experience and these type of things, like you're already, you took this potentially infinite space where your answer is somewhere in there, and you just went to the big fat boring middle of where
Yeah.
the best possible easy answer is. And again, just remember that these LLMs are just simply maximizing the likelihood of giving you the best probable next response. And again, the way that you affect those probabilities is by giving it additional information that would cause those things, right? So again, if I say, give this report is being given to a CEO, or this report is being given to the front desk workers at a hotel, like those are two different levels. There's no judgment in terms of those jobs. This is just like simply the level of aperture of the quality of the types of things that you're looking at in one case versus another. And
Yes.
again, when you look at that possible space, the only way that you can get to either one of those answers, because neither of those is likely. It doesn't know that I'm talking to a front desk person at a hotel. I don't know that I'm talking to CEO. So it's going to give you a very generic answer that sits in the middle that could work for either of those. So if you wanted to
Yes.
go towards either one of those, you have to give it that information. Context is king. Again, the reason we have a platform like CharmIQ is specifically because the majority of the time that you spend in a platform is you're extracting the useful things that you did in the last exercise so that it can help you on the next exercise. So if you just wrote a report and you went through a whole bunch of iterations around, again, figuring out who the audience is and all that other stuff, then in Charm, the next step you would do before you call that exercise done is you would take your distillation charm and you would say, great, like take a look at this conversation. Like where did we have to ask questions? Can we pull that out? And you can turn that either into reference material, or you can turn that into a charm. So again, this iterative process, this evolving, this developing process of building this relationship that you have with your charms, which at the end of the day is really with yourself. You're just paying forward some work that you're doing to help future you. I always love to talk about this with with some of my staff. I love to talk about the past them and the future them and the present them, because we all make mistakes and we all grow and we all learn and so forth. So you don't want to like take the person that's today that's growing and say like you did something bad in the past. It's like, well, the past version of you who didn't know as much as you didn't make a good decision here. So
Sure.
let's talk about how present you can now save future you. And again,
Yes.
this is the same thing you're doing as you're building up all of this context for your agents and any of the other things that you're working on, your charms and charm, is you're really trying to save time for future you, given all the learnings that you've done today.
100%. And I love, the context is not only important in the information, like the specific report, but who's the audience, right? Like you said, the report to the CEO is going to look and sound different than the report to the CFO, right? Or to the CMO. All of those, and I love when my charms, then they do this a lot because I require it of them, is to ask me questions like, is there anything I'm missing? Is there anything I can provide? And sometimes I forget, right? Sometimes and they'll say, who is this for? Is it for a current customer? Is it for a new customer? Who is the audience? And that bit of context is queen, because then, we can be using language that really resonates with the audience. We can use language that's very pleasing to the audience, right? Especially if you're either trying to sell something or get something, that bit of context is equally as important, in my opinion, as the report itself. And I think that the more people engage with the AI, with the machine, and the more they kind of slow down and less barking and more collaborating, right, is the key to those amazing aha results. And it's interesting because in my personal opinion and experience in working with AI is every day I do it and every day I engage with my charms, I become a better collaborator, a better partner with the machine. And that gives me better results. So I'm doing things faster, deeper, and more customized to me. The machine will sound more like me because it learns what, there's one word that I dislike the most that always showed up. It was bespoke. And I would never use that word, especially in, so I would just tell my charms, like, don't use that word. Like, and they're like, hey, no problem. There's 100 other words that we can use together. So context is so, so important. So this has been amazing and engaging, and the future of work and collaboration with AI is important. So for those listening, before we head out, why is this mindset shift so important? And what's at stake if we stay in the assistant mentality? Because I want to end on that, because it really is a simple thing just to be thinking about. So what's at stake if we just stay in this kind of barking orders, drive-through kind of mentality?
Great question. And I would say this is the thing that keeps me up most at night. Given how much I see people just barking orders at their AI and then taking those results and then just passing them on to other people, I hate to be the one to say this, but if you can bark those orders and get that result at it, then your boss can bark those orders and get that result from it. So what value are you providing to this? So you want to always be indispensable, not because you're going to get fired, but because that means you're using your skills. That means your individual, whatever it is that you bring, you're bringing it. And you want to do that. You don't want to be yet another cog in the machine, because again, we're kind of producing things that are cogs in machines that are going to get rid of those. You want to become indispensable. And the best way to become indispensable with these things is to learn how to use them effectively. And the best way to learn, as we've been saying, to use these things effectively is to use them as collaborators.
Yes.
Because if you have this context that you're providing and you have all of this richness that's helping you grow, one of the things that just popped into my head as you were saying your last wrap up on that was you should be growing from this. If you go into ChatGPT and you say, write a report, and you get a report and you hand it off, there's zero chance that you grew in that opportunity there.
Yes.
But if you sit down and you're like, well, I don't really understand the audience that I'm going to be talking to. Like, I know it's my boss and blah, blah, blah. Like, can you help me understand how they might receive information better? And you do that dialogue with your machine and you walk back out of that exercise and you're like, wow, I actually understand how to better communicate with my boss or with my customer or with whomever. And that's what you should be doing out of this. So, and again, maybe that's how we can flip this around. Maybe this is another way to think about this assistant mindset, is that if you're just simply a node in a telephone game between you, your boss, you, and whatever's doing the thing, like that's no good. Like that is the definition of something that's going to be easily replaced.
Yes.
And so again, if your boss tells you something and you just go to ChatGPT and type that in and hand it back to your boss, I got news for you. There's going to be a time very near future where your boss just types that into ChatGPT.
Yes.
So again, how do you become indispensable? And again, we're not here to fearmonger. We're not here to make you worried about your job. What we're here to tell you is that you have a job. So somebody already vetted you. They already put you in a position. You're already doing what you do. But how do you elevate that? How do you take that to the next level? How do you become indispensable? And again, you have now an infinite number of colleagues. You don't have to go back to school. You don't have to think about the fact that you're worried about how to learn again, because these LLMs are infinitely patient. They will infinitely break down ideas for you. They will give you, I have used it in so many different times. I use them for this experience, obviously, to help me come up with better analogies that hopefully resonate with people. And we're trying. And it's, again, this is what they provide. I can't work alone. I have a team of my charms that help me provide more context to these things, which is why we come each week with new ideas and new ways of presenting these things. So I hope you guys can take that away. Our listening audience can take away that fact, again, that you're in a position, somebody vetted you, you have experience. I think it's just the usual thing of like, you're freaked out, you're worried, your boss barked some order at you, so now you got to bark your order at something else. And it's like, let's elevate this stuff. Let's make you the better version. Jillian always says it best and she'll wrap up with it, but make yourself the best version of you that you can. And again, these machines can help you do that.
They, not only that, and you just reminded me of something. A friend of mine came to me and he said, he does editing and he's in the entertainment industry and they don't always have steady work, right? And he's like, I need to come up with a different stream of income, like a side hustle. But all I really know is this is my professional me. I need to think outside of the box. I'm like, so what interests you? And music really interests him and he has other interests. But I said, use the AI as your trainer. You are the student, right? The AI is the expert. So we sat down and we did a couple of exercises. He goes, I want to be an expert in side hustle for being an influencer in the music industry and have links to an Amazon store and start a podcast. And so he's using the charms and the machine to make him an expert in an area that he's not an expert in today. So in this case, he's the student and the machine is the teacher. And he said, I've never engaged with AI like this before. I'm always telling him what to do and it's giving me results. And in this case, he's like, I'm the student, teach me.
Yep.
Like, what do I need to do to become an expert in this? How do I start this? And the machine is actually training him in this certain area that he knew nothing about. So that's a different way of thinking about it, right? And you can go into it and say, I'm not an expert in launching a podcast. Help me. Where do I start? What do I do? And then boom, and it's interesting when you flip it and you allow the machine to teach and train you in something, then you really get the context of that relationship of a thinking partner, because you're looking to the machine for its expertise.
Awesome.
So that's one thing I wanted to share because it's a different way of thinking about it.
That's great.
Yeah. So Rob, this has been incredibly enlightening. And for everyone watching, the message is clear. You treat AI as an assistant and you'll get assistant level results. But if you engage as a thinking partner and sharing your context, your goals, your challenges, your fears, you unlock a whole new level of value. And in my opinion, a relationship with someone that will make you a better, stronger, faster version of yourself. But it takes two. So in this mindset, try it in your own work. Let us know if anything changes for you, if you see some different results. And if you need a side hustle, look to your charm or your AI to help you get there and to build that skill that you maybe didn't have before. So for everyone here, the links to CharmIQ and our previous conversations are in the descriptions. Please like and share and leave a comment and let us know if you have any questions or what your experiences was when you changed your mindset from transactional to collaborative. Thanks, everyone. And thanks, Rob, for being here. See you next week.
Take care.